Yep, is 4 o'clock on July 1st, 2021. And I'm going to call this Lacey City Council meeting to order. And we'll get started with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a published agenda for today's meeting. I don't think there's any additions.
Move to approve the agenda as posted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Then the motion carries, and we have an agenda. First up on our agenda is public comments on items not on the agenda, and I know we do have one person signed up. Can you please bring them in?
Mayor, point of order. I am going to be sometimes putting my video on and off just because of my bandwidth here, okay?
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor. Looks like Jeff is online. Jeff, can you please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and give you about 3 minutes for public comment.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Lawyer, and I'm a resident of unincorporated Thurston County. First, let me thank you all for your service, for the service you provide to our community. This afternoon, I'd like to introduce you to a project called Better Than a Tent. It's led by the United Churches of Olympia with several other faith communities, community organizations, and the City of Olympia helping. Our goal is to build micro shelters to replace tents in various homeless encampments in the area. The micro shelters are primitive 8-foot by 8-foot structures made of plywood and lumber. When we started the project last year, we referred to our units as micro houses and placed 9 of them at the site known as Nickerson. The residents are thrilled at having a much safer, drier, and warmer place from the rats. Last winter, the City of Olympia contracted Earth Homes LLC to use the micro house concept to replace tents at their mitigation site, and they became more sophisticated structures. They included insulation and real doors and windows. They replaced all the tents at the mitigation site. I'm extremely grateful to the City of Olympia, Port of Olympia, Earth Homes LLC, and all the other folks that made that happen. I'm told the mitigation site has become quieter, calmer, and safer since the micro houses were placed there. But we still have folks living in tents and other encampments, and so are hoping to build 50 micro shelters to replace tents this summer, while weather permits outside construction. The micro shelters are still very primitive, but are weather and rodent resistant and can be locked and are much better than a tent. If necessary, they can be disassembled and moved. We hope to work with the cities of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater and other community organizations to accomplish our goals. And I'd like to thank you in advance for your support. People who are interested in helping out can contact me at jeff.lawyer@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I've had a tour of your facilities, and you're doing great work, and I hope we can have a chance to work together sometime soon.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So that's the only person that we've had sign up for public comment. And so we're going to go into a proclamation. But before we do that, Jen is going to give Jen Burbidge is going to give a small presentation on Parks and Recreation Month.
Good evening, Mayor Ryder and council members. I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see the presentation?
Yep.
We see your presentation notes.
Oh, thank you. Is better?
Just a second. There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so for the members of the public, I'm Jen Burbidge, Lacey Parks Culture and Recreation Director, and I'm excited to share about Parks and Recreation Month. Since 1985, people in the United States have celebrated Park and Recreation Month in July to promote building strong, vibrant, and resilient communities through the power of parks and recreation, and to recognize the more than 160,000 full-time park and recreation professionals, along with hundreds of thousands of part-time and seasonal workers and volunteers that maintain our country's local, state, and community parks. The services that park and recreation professionals provide are vital for our communities, from protecting open space and natural spaces and resources to helping fight obesity and providing activities and resources for all people. This has been especially true throughout the COVID-19 public health crisis. Park and Recreation Month encourages everyone to reflect on the exponential value park and recreation professionals bring to communities. Parks are at the center of so many experiences and memories, moments that park and recreation professionals can help make happen. Our local parks are often our first experiences in nature, our introduction to a favorite hobby or a physical activity, and they are places to gather with friends and family and spaces to celebrate life's special moments. Spots of respite and healing, sites that connect us with essential community services, and so much more. Like I said before, local parks have been essential throughout COVID, and many of our community members are finding a new appreciation for the essential spaces we manage and the vital programs that we provide. This year's theme for Park and Recreation Month is Our Park and Recreation Story. And we want to highlight the stories of how our communities are stronger, more vibrant, and more resilient because of Parks and Recreation. For the month of July, we will be encouraging our community to share their Park and Recreation stories on social media using hashtag #OurParkAndRecStory. We will also be reaching out to participants in our parks and at our programs to gather some of their short stories that they can share. So this is pretty cool. The National Recreation and Park Association, or NRPA, is partnering with former Lacey Loves to Read 2016 featured author Kwame Alexander and our Parks and Recreation community to produce our Park and Recreation poem. You might recognize a couple of the guys in these photos. Everyone is invited to submit original poems or meaningful thoughts and phrases that you can create about Parks and Rec. The final piece, our Park and Recreation poem, will represent the combined ideas of our community from across the country and will be showcased online at the end of July and also during the 2021 NRPA annual conference. So we encourage everyone to take advantage of all that our local parks and programs have to offer. You can visit our website, which is laceyparks.org. Join our mailing list for our new monthly e-newsletter. You can do that by emailing this email address here at the bottom of the screen, laceyparks@ci.lacey.wa.us. And then also this fall, you can watch for the Lacey Parks Playbook. So this is our new program guide, formerly known as Recreation Guide. In the playbook, you can find a wide variety of activities, including sports, arts and dance, kids classes, swim lessons, special events, and a lot more. And we also do look forward to seeing all those stories come through in hashtag #OurParkAndRecStory. So thank you.
And with that, we have a Parks and Recreation Proclamation month to be read. And so hopefully all the council members are ready. And I'll start it off. It's the City of Lacey official proclamation. Whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens and contributing to the economic, environmental well-being of a community and region. And
whereas Parks and Recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all residents. And
whereas Park and Recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And
whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitats for wildlife. And
Whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And
whereas the U.S. House of Representatives designated July as Parks and Recreation Month in 2009, and
whereas the Lacey City Council Board of Park Commissioners and community members recognize the significance of our community's park and recreation programs.
Now, therefore, I, Andy Ryder, Mayor of the City of Lacey, on behalf of the Lacey City Council, do hereby proclaim July 2021 as Lacey Parks and Recreation Month. Sign myself, Mayor Andy Ryder, July 1st, 2021. Thank you so much, Jen, for keeping our parks just an amazing part of our city. And I know we're right in the middle of doing some master planning for the Cuyo Park and Greenway. And so hopefully everyone is participating in that. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
So next up on our agenda is an ordinance. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Andrews, and it's an ordinance looking at annexation for capital estates.
I would assume it's my turn.
Yep.
All right. Sorry, I was locked in cyberspace there for a moment. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So you have the ordinance in front of you tonight for the final approval of the Capital City Estates, Chambers Estates annexation. Give me 1 second to be able to share my screen. Okay, so the city has formulated a petition for annexation for the area, including Capital City Golf Club Estates, Chambers Estates, Capital City Townhomes, and the Capital City Golf Course. The annexation has been sent to the Thurston County Boundary Review Board for their review, and they have declined jurisdiction. So now it comes back to you for final consideration in ordinance form. A little bit about the annexation area. You can see a map on your screen there. The area is located in the Horizons Planning area within the Lacey Urban Growth Area, generally south of Yelm Highway, north of 66th Avenue Southeast, east of the Chehalis Western Trail, and west of Ruddle Road. As I mentioned previously, it includes the Capital City Golf Club Estates, Chambers Estates, and Capital City Townhomes. The area includes approximately 288 acres in 491 separate tax parcels. The current assessed value of the area to be annexed is a little over $134 million. The city of Lacey did initiate this petition for annexation on behalf of those parcels where we do hold power of attorney agreements. We hold power of attorney agreements in the amount of about $100 million of assessed value, which means that we hold the about 75% of the assessed value for the area to be annexed, which is above the 60% needed for annexation. Here's an aerial photograph of the area. It's largely developed. As I mentioned, contains the Capital City Estates subdivision that was developed along with the Capital City Golf Course back in the 1960s, around the same time as the Chambers Estate subdivision, which is the larger lot subdivision on the west side of Rainier Road. The area contains approximately 470 dwelling units with an estimated population of a little less than 1,000 people. Here is the zoning. As you can see, the zoning is all consistent throughout the area. It's low density, 0 to 4 units per acre. The purpose of this zoning district is to allow for single family residential development on larger lots. Upon annexation, the low density 0 to 4 designation remains as per agreements that are held with Thurston County. The area is a logical extension of the city limits boundary. As you can see, it is almost surrounded on all 4 sides by city limits. It will not create any additional unincorporated islands or peninsulas. In fact, it's a very logical extension and will eliminate this unincorporated island. A little bit about utilities. It's well served with city water. In fact, we have a city well, well 4, that serves the area. Additionally, sewer service was previously all septic systems until recently with a project that the city has initiated to convert all the septic systems within Capital City Estates to city sewer. Phase 1 of that project is almost complete, and phase 2 is just starting. The Chambers Estate subdivision on the west side of Rainier Road still has a septic tank and drain field. How we came about so many of the power of attorney agreements, which you can see on the screen here, those parcels in pink, are if and when a parcel signed on to city utilities, they were required to sign that power of attorney agreement. So we largely accomplished this through that city sewer project. A little bit about, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, a little bit about some additional public services that will transition in the area upon annexation. First of all, public streets in the area would be transitioned to be maintained by City of Lacey. It's important to note that any private streets in the area will continue to remain private. As well, any public stormwater facilities would transition to being maintained by city staff. Police service in the area would transition from Thurston County Sheriff's Office to City of Lacey Police Department. We anticipate that this would be about an additional 1,100 calls for service per year. Just to give you some perspective, in a non-pandemic year, our police department handles about 42 to 46,000 calls for service per year. So with the addition of this, these services, it would not unduly burden the police department with additional calls. Fire services are largely provided by Lacey Fire District 3, except for the Chambers Estates subdivision, which is currently in Fire District 6, which is the East Olympia district. Upon annexation, this transitions to LFD 3 from FD 6, and both fire districts are aware of this change. And I've spoken with both chiefs here in the last week to bring them on board with what's happening tonight. Additionally, with all annexations that are currently in LFD 3, within the annexation, we have language in the ordinance that waives a portion of the city's bonded indebtedness for fire district services, so that we're not levying property owners that are already in the service area for LFD 3 twice. A couple other issues that I wanted to mention before turning it over to you for consideration and discussion. First of all, we've done public outreach to the neighbors in the area, including a public informational forum that we held back on March 8th, that we provided notice by mail to all property owners in the area about. Additionally, the city council held a public hearing a couple of months ago. Finally, we will, upon annexation, be coordinating a census, door-to-door census of the area. We need to make sure that when we do an annexation that we get an accurate count of the population in the area that we will be annexing, so that we get our fair share of those population-based, population-based revenues distributed to the city. So with that, I'll turn it over to you for consideration of passage of the ordinance in front of you. I did want to make mention of one thing, which is we have in the ordinance included language that would make this effective September 1. We found with the recent Marvin Steilacoom annexation that there is a considerable amount of work that needs to happen to transition services, utility billing, addressing, and a host of other things that take a long time to be able to get accurate. And so we want to make sure we have enough time as city staff to be able to serve this area and make sure that it's all kind of accurate. We have accurate information going into that September 1st date, given the challenges we have right now and some of our staffing issues. So we're recommending that September 1 be the effective date of the annexation. So with that, I'd be happy to turn it over to you for your consideration and answer any questions.
Okay, first get a motion.
So I move that we approve ordinance number 1596 to approve the Capital City Chamber Estates annexation. Effective date of annexation will be September 1st, 2021.
Second.
It's been first and seconded. Let's have some discussion. Councilmember Sedman.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, everybody knows how big I am on annexation, but I'm just as big on fairness and equality and everybody being treated the same. I support this, but I can't support it if we're treating one side of Rainier Road or College Street differently than the other side. East, west, whatever, they're all being annexed. I believe that all the homeowners, if one person is getting their sewer paid for, they should all get their sewer paid for. I won't vote against this the way it is, but I will not, I'll just abstain, but I'd rather see an amended a motion to include Chamber Estates and them being treated just as fairly as Cap City. Thank you.
I know where you're coming from there, Councilmember, but we are starting a septic sewer program that will, go on and trying to get the whole city into sewer. So I honestly don't think we're treating anyone differently here in this circumstance, but duly noted. Is there any other discussion? And it's been moved and seconded to adopt this ordinance annexing the Capital City and Chambers Estates. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Then the motion carries. And there's one.
I abstain.
One abstention. But the motion carries. Next up is the mayor's report, and I'm really proud and happy that we finally gotten around to appoint Eduardo Maldonado to the Planning Commission. He's someone who's been interested in a long time, and he's applied on more than one occasion. He's been really, I think will be a great addition to our Planning Commission. So I move that we appoint Eduardo Maldonado to our Planning Commission. Is there a second?
I second.
Eduardo, I think you're here online. You want to introduce yourself real quick to the City Council? There you go. And unmute yourself. Maybe turn on your camera.
Click this.
Well, we can.
We're here.
There you go.
Okay.
Hey, good to see
appreciate the mayor appointment. I really believe that after 5 years living in the city, I'm pretty much enthusiastic what's going on, and I would like to make my contribution to this community.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Then the motion carries. Welcome to the Planning Commission.
Congratulations, Edward, and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So next up is the City Manager report. I'll turn it over to you, City Manager.
Sorry, just catching up there.
That's right.
So,
I like putting it on the spot.
well, Mayor and City Council, thank you. We have a couple items before you. The first is the RAC financial plan update. Jen Burbidge, our Parks, Recreation and Cultural Director, will provide that report.
Okay, and Troy's going to help as well. So hopefully he'll be coming in through the portal. There he goes. I will go ahead and share the correct screen. Can you all see this?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, good evening again, Mayor Ryder, members of the council. Thanks for the opportunity to go over the updated 20-year financial plan for the regional athletic complex. As you know, it's important to update the plan when there are significant changes that warrant such a change. So Troy and I, as I said, are going to be tag teaming this discussion just like we did at the work session. And so I'll get us started and then pass the presentation over to him. So just to note real quick, the 20-year update is for the years 2020 through 2039. The update was prepared by City of Lacey staff, myself, Scott Devlin, who's our Public Works Park Maintenance Supervisor, Sue Faylash, who is the Parks Culture and Recreation Manager, and then of course Troy Wu, our Finance Director. This plan is recommended by the Lacey Board of Park Commissioners. That's the Chair Aaron Wheeler, Vice Chair Sarah Daniels, Commissioner Ken Balsley, Commissioner Troy Kirby, and Commissioner Irwin Vidalian. And actually, I apologize, Sarah Daniels is the chair. So I didn't even notice that that was a typo. She's the chair for this year. I'll give you a quick overview of what we are going to cover. So that is some background information about the RAC, the recommendations that are in the financial plan. We'll go over some considerations. And then ultimately tonight, we are looking for acceptance by the City Council of this plan that has been recommended by the Park Board. So to get into some background, in 1998, Thurston County and the City of Lacey entered into a partnership to jointly acquire, plan, fund, develop, and maintain an athletic complex. This MOU provided joint ownership for a minimum of 15 years, at least through March 2014. The county and the city planned the athletic complex cooperatively with considerable public input to provide for the athletic needs in the region, as well as a community park with picnic shelters, play equipment, and facilities to hold special events. Then in 2002, voters in the City of Lacey approved a bond issue for development of the RAC, as well as several other parks in Lacey. Also in 2002, the Capital Area Regional Public Facilities District, or PFD, was formed by the county and the cities of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater for the purpose of developing the RAC and the Hands-On Children's Museum. In 2004, phase 1 of the RAC, which was 4 soccer fields, parking and concessions, and also restrooms, opened up. Then in 2009, phase 2, which is 4 softball fields, 1 baseball field, 4 picnic shelters, basketball courts, play equipment, trails, more restrooms, and more parking, opened up, completing the vision for the current athletic fields. Then in 2010, the Lacey City Council authorized an agreement for the transfer of Thurston County's share of the ownership of the RAC to the city. So that's a basic overview of the background. Troy will be adding a little more background once we get to his portion as well. The need for athletic fields was apparent before the RAC project came to be, and the need still exists today. The RAC has been heavily used since opening. The synthetic soccer field is booked 7 days a week in the winter months. We also have tournaments on the softball and baseball fields 50 to 52 weekends per year. Annual special events are also held throughout the year as well. The park is used also not only by those booking a tournament or a field use, but it's used by people who drop in and walk daily. There's families with young children who flock to the play equipment, teens who rush to the basketball courts after school, friends who hold picnics in the shelters, and ball players who come in from all over the county and the region to play in tournaments that aren't going to rain out. So this facility really is, it's a public or community facing location, and also a destination facing facility as well. The RAC is used by an estimated 200,000 athletic participants for league and tournament play per year, and then an estimated 1.2 million park and special event patrons per year who walk into the facility. To give you an idea of some of the user groups that frequent the RAC, and that's on that side where you book a league or a tournament or a game. This slide indicates the adult and youth user groups on the 2 main sides of the facility. We've got the soccer fields, and you can see some adult and youth groups here. And then the other side of the complex is the softball and baseball field side. You can see the adult and youth groups here as well. And you'll probably recognize a lot of the familiar names from the community that have been in existence for quite some time. Some of the recommendations that you can find in the financial plan are to increase use on the athletic fields by identifying slower rental times and maximizing the number of teams in a tournament, and those things can equal increased revenue. There's definitely more opportunity on the soccer/football side of the complex due to the baseball and softball fields being maxed out all year. Staff have been able to get creative with more lacrosse, flag football, and ultimate frisbee over on that soccer/football side, and really just looking at as many ways as possible to get user groups out there on those fields. Another recommendation is to seek new innovative ways to increase revenues. COVID-19 obviously had an impact in 2020 on the RAC, but as everybody else, we're excited to be bouncing back and moving forward. Fortunately, sales tax has been favorable for the PFD revenues. Another recommendation is to monitor the PFD revenues annually and continue to commit to life cycle and capital improvements. So it's important to invest in this facility so that it will continue to be the premier complex that it is for the local community and also the region. Unfortunately, the sustainability of the RAC at its current level of supported subsidy, tax supported subsidy, is a concern. A 5-year strategy has been developed, and then moving forward, a long-term financial plan needs to be secured. So at this point, I'm going to pass the presentation over to Troy.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Good afternoon, Council. We did want to provide a little more background on some of the factors that influence the development of the plan. Jen has covered a few of these already, but I thought I'd provide a few more details for the Council and the public as well. As Jen stated, the RAC is not a self-supporting operation. In fact, if you look at the 2014 through 2019 years, it was only about 45% self-sustaining. So in other words, the league fees and the field rentals only provided 45% of the revenues needed to support the RAC. Jen also mentioned the Thurston County settlement. Back during that settlement, the negotiations led to about a $1.8 million settlement. The idea was to provide operations and maintenance support for the RAC through 2013, which coincided with the end of the agreement with the county, as well as about $716,000 for capital replacement. And in the end, we ended up using that capital portion of the settlement for operations as well. We were able to use that settlement through the year 2020. So we actually were able to use that settlement much longer than we originally anticipated. The Public Facility District sales tax, which is basically a county-wide sales tax, does sunset in 2027. One of the requirements to levy that sales tax is having outstanding debt on the original project. So the city debt is retired at the end of 2027. This is a plan that we will review periodically. As we know, things can change very quickly, as indicated last year with the pandemic. So, we are in constant review of the numbers and changing accordingly. And I think maybe the point I really want to emphasize here is we want to maintain the same level of service to the community. Jen mentioned that this is a premier tourism facility. It's also a community asset. I'll even go as far as to call it kind of the crown jewel park within Lacey. So the goal is really to maintain that same level in terms of operations and maintenance of the RAC. Next slide, Jen. In terms of the financial model itself, you have the complete model in the packet. It is part of the plan. And as you can see by looking at that plan, it includes basically every line item in the budget. I certainly don't want to review it at that detailed level tonight, but I'll just highlight a few of the main things within the financial model. So we are using $200,000 per year for maintenance and operation, and that is coming from the Public Facility District sales tax. The general fund has also been supporting the regional athletic complex, right around $200,000 per year. Lodging tax is another supporter of the of the RAC operations. Of course, this is a tourism facility, so $160,000 per year has been coming from lodging tax. I do want to highlight and remind the council that last December, the council did set aside or commit $800,000 of reserves to go towards the operation of the RAC for the next 4 years, so $200,000 per year. And this is really to really bridge us until we could try to find a more sustainable model for the RAC. So it's really giving us 4 years to come up with that plan to find that sustainability. Again, the public facilities district sales tax is set to expire here in about 6 years. And if you look kind of overall at the model, the RAC operations can be sustained through 2029 if we use all reserves. And of course, that means this would take away from capital improvements and replacement of equipment and those types of things. Next slide, please. So I did want to show a graphic of, the results of the financial model, the piece of that. This is really a 10-year illustration of the results of the model. And this is really just the maintenance and operations portion of the budget. So any sort of field replacement or life cycle replacements is not included in these numbers. And of course, if we start in 2021, we are required to adopt a balanced budget. So that's what we see there. And of course, you have revenues in green, expenditures in red, and then the blue line is the income or loss for the regional athletic complex. And then you could see in 2022, 2023, we do have inflationary increases to operations and maintenance for the RAC. 2024, in this illustration, you could see the impact of the council committed reserves being depleted. I do want to point out that the model was developed assuming only 3 years worth of committed reserves, but the council did actually commit 4. So you could really shift that line 1 year in terms of what is, with the newest information. So again, you see a pretty big drop there in the net loss in 2024. 2025 through 27, again, inflationary increases. 2028, you see another significant drop, and that is the impact of the public facility district sales tax ending. And then you, of course, have continued inflationary increases through the 2029-2030 timeframe. So again, in summary, the RAC we can sustain the RAC through 2029, but that would deplete all of its reserves. But our overall plan is to find a more sustainable model up, within the next 4 years. I think part of that solution is going to be continued support from the general fund. This is very much a community park, but I will point out that general fund dollars, there's a lot of competition for those dollars. So within this period, we will have to look at kind of the whole picture in terms of the general fund, but certainly it would be justified to continue to do so. And I'll turn things back over to Jen.
Okay, thanks, Troy. I'll just close by emphasizing what a great asset the RAC is to the community and how important it will be, like Troy said, to develop that long-term funding plan. So as I mentioned earlier, we're looking for acceptance of the 20-year financial plan update with considerations and recommendations discussed, and with the use of medium-term resources while the longer-term funding plan is developed. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. A motion, please. Can you stop sharing your screen?
This is Carolyn. I'll move approval of the plan. And I'd like a question.
Second.
Yeah. It's been motioned and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Cox.
So this is a question for Troy. On the figure, the chart that you were just showing us with the revenue and expenditures, what are the assumptions made on the revenues in terms of the rates that we would be charging leagues and that sort of thing? Are you building in an inflationary factor there? or is it assuming current levels?
There is an inflationary adjustment within the revenues, but I will state that they are conservative, and not just because I'm generally conservative, but there is competition out there in terms of these types of facilities, so we do have to be mindful of that. And there's also lots of other entertainment competition that's out there too. So we are very mindful and remaining, competitive with the market. But there is a slight increase in terms of inflationary adjustments to revenues.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Greenstein.
I have two questions for you, Troy. First, when the public facility money runs out, you said that lines up with when the debt is paid off as well, correct? Is that expense or that lack of that expense included in that graph? It
is. So currently the revenues do exceed the amount of annual debt service, which allows us to subsidize the operations of the RAC. But yeah, that does include the debt service stopping at the same time as the revenues.
So that revenue must not be very much then, right? I mean, what is that? Is the revenue just enough to pay off the debt, and so it's not really affected by this graph?
No, actually, the revenue is higher. In fact, the debt service is in the 600,000 range, I believe, and in the current environment, I believe last year's public facility district revenues for the city. So we do share the revenues with the city of Olympia. It's about a 72%, 28% split, with Lacey getting the larger share. The Lacey share was in excess of $1 million, and I think it was actually 1.2 million. So we have been building reserves, which is nice in terms of capital replacement. So we're in a good position, and that is also allowing us to operate until 2029 on those reserves.
Yeah, that's why that graph doesn't make a lot of sense. I know you and your conservative graphs and all, but that one's not making a lot of sense. Councilmember Kunkel?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I had a couple of questions. When we're in the conception phase of constructing the RAC, were there some other ideas that the field could be utilized for that may not have come to fruition, that could be a revenue generator, that could bring in the tourism tax revenue? Also, is there any part of the RAC, any part of the acreage at all that is not being utilized or not being utilized a decent amount that we could consider expanding or improving for some other reason to bring the masses in to utilize? Are we getting the best use out of that field as a whole?
So as far as the first question, something that did not come to fruition, I might need to defer to the city manager on this one. Going back in history, there isn't anything that I know of.
The only thing that there's ever been talk about is possibly doing something on the corner where the parking is, right behind the sign, like build a sublease that out to a restaurant or something like that. But I know parking's pretty tight right there. I mean, it'd be really neat if there was some more services. That's the tough thing about the RAC, is that people can be there all day long, but then they have to get in their car to go to any sort of get food or do anything like that. I know there's a little concession stand, but it's just not quite the same. And so I know there's been some discussions over the years. I'm not sure if is that permitted under the zoning right there?
Well, so that corner portion is really needed for parking. I mean, it's been used for parking, and moving forward, it's that parking should be improved, and it's very important that we have that parking. But there is potential across Marvin in phase 3 to do some type of revenue generating
It would be nice to get some additional financial support from the other jurisdictions. If this is a regional park that is bringing regional dollars, then we should have some regional participation. I know that's been brought up before, and I would support that. I think Olympia and Tumwater could pony up, or the county could help pony up. Those are some ideas that I think are valuable, and trying to get the best use out of that property to minimize or mitigate the financial burden.
I absolutely,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree on the LTAC dollar side of things. I know we asked the city of Olympia at one point, and they declined to give us any LTAC dollars, but I really think that the VCB has a role in this, and their sports commission to be advocating for the RAC. And so I think there should be some opportunities there with the VCB advocating too.
I like Lacey Athletic Center
at this point. So
we are trying to sell naming rights still. That took a hit with COVID. As you know, we brought that policy forth, and we're had some real good momentum going there, and so we're trying to gain that back. But to your second question, Councilmember Kunkel, as far as really taking a deep dive on what the space that's out there is being used for, I think it's smart to definitely look at the spaces that aren't used as much, and that's the soccer and football side during certain times of the year. So for sure, it'll be what we'll be doing is taking a deep dive on what all is not being used as much as to its potential, and expanding the revenue opportunities there.
I'm sorry to step in here. Deputy Mayor, can you take over the meeting for me for a little bit? I need to be called. Thank you.
Yes. So what I see is Michael's hand is up. Councilmember Stedman's hand is up.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The mayor mentioned the Olympia declined the LTAC dollars, but was that before Tumwater and Olympia approved their MPDs? I think that's a factor that they have additional revenues, and I think that happened after or before they approved their MPD, which of course we all know ours barely failed by 700 votes. So that's another avenue that we could look at for future revenues, is see if that 700 negative or that we didn't get is maybe 7,000 plus now. People value their parks, especially after a pandemic.
Is there any other questions? Councilmember Miller.
I just wanted to go back and revisit the subject of the competition that the RAC is up against in terms of other complexes. And is there stuff that they have that we don't? Are we as competitive as possible? Is there something that's going to make us more attractive? Like maybe if lodging was closer to the RAC. I know that the mayor brought up the subject of food and not having to drive, but what can we do? Is there anything that we can position or strategically place nearby that will give us a competitive edge, or at least bring us up to par with some of the competing facilities?
So we definitely have a premier complex. The competition comes in that there's just more fields that are developed now since the RAC was developed. So I don't know that there's any single thing that we could do right now to become more competitive. We definitely are. Like Troy mentioned, we keep our rates, within the market level, so that we can attract people in. From my perspective, the best thing that we could do is to put more synthetic turf baseball fields on the RAC Phase 3, and that way we can attract the tournaments that we haven't been able to this point in. And it also provides more community fields for the public.
Do you think that if there was lodging across the street, that would make us more attractive?
The thing I do know is I know that there's capacity in the hotels that are already existing, based on reports that we get from the visitor VCB. and also the study that was done around the indoor sports facility. So I'm not sure if I know exactly how to answer that with the proximity of a hotel. It might be better for the tourism folks to answer. I can definitely find out.
City Manager Spence.
So I was just going to reaffirm about the corner. There was a lot of discussion about doing a restaurant and a hotel, but again, it was pointed out earlier, I guess the premium on parking is so great that space is needed for additional parking. I think there was also a little bit of concern, and this is a past discussion about, are we competing with other area hotels? And so, and because you are close enough, even though you're on the corridor, you still have the Martin and Marvin Road corridor, that it's not that far of a drive. So, but your point, there's that convenience factor. If something that's across the street, that'd be attractive. Going back to the LTAC issue, I know that's been a discussion. I think to some degree it does deserve more discussion. Do we provide more contribution to LTAC dollars? We have tried in the past to ask other jurisdictions, but we ultimately end up start trading dollars amongst one another. We're already supporting the air show in Tumwater. We do support the Lake Fair in Olympia. And so we have this issue where if we start giving them money and they give us money, and all of a sudden it becomes like a net zero. So something we need to decide, where do we want to invest our LTAC dollars? But at some point, we've been at the same level for quite a while. We may want to increase that if we can.
Councilmember Greenstein.
I think Scott actually just answered my question. Was, can't we give more LTAC dollars from our own LTAC? Is there any limitation to that? Or, I mean, it's our facility. We know it brings people in. If you talk to the hoteliers in the area, they'll tell you it's the single biggest draw we have to Lacey Hotels is the rack. I've talked to several of them. They've all said that. So it seems like a perfectly reasonable, logical LTAC expense to put more LTAC money there. I mean, I get that we give to Tumwater and Lake Fair and all those things, but I have to think we put more heads and beds in Lacey from the rack than from those other things. So maybe some of that money needs to be diverted to the rack.
So one of the other things that is not brought up is the fact that we tried for a Metropolitan Parks District, and maybe down the road that is something that could be re-looked at again. So I noticed that the Mayor Ryder is back again, so I'm going to turn it over. We're near the end of our discussion.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Deputy Mayor. I think Councilmember Stedman, you have her hand up, and I think we've deliberated enough on this.
I have one more comment, but we still need to do a motion, right?
No, there's been a motion in a second.
Oh, okay. I missed that one. I wanted to make sure, we also know that, Mushroom Corner is going to be available relatively soon. And I'm not advocating that we buy Mushroom Corner, but we can leverage that. It's just like housing and leveraging, permit fees and other tools like that. Whoever's going to develop that corner, we can use, we could get pretty creative in what we can use to, transfer development rights or whatever. And maybe take a slab of that, the less desirable and less valuable part of that property. And maybe that would work for a developer if that property is bought and developed. I'm just saying there's a lot of things in the future. We also need to recognize that corner of our current site is a valuable piece of property. And, we're not going to get a return on the asphalt jungle of parking lot. We can get other lands for parking lots.
Well, I do think we need to sort of think outside the box there. I guess everything's on the table. What sometimes we get caught up in these discussions as, oh, look, the rack's in the red. Oh, the sky's falling down. Well, the rack is responsible for, so much economic development within the city of Lacey that it's not even, without it, we'd be talking about where we gained other general fund dollars, right? So let's not miss the point here of having a premier facility that is a destination facility for all of Western Washington. So
it's also a community park, and they really aren't meant to pay for themselves. That is a perfectly logical use of general fund money.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're saying. This park is different than every other park, So anyway, sometimes I think we do get lost. People look at, oh, look at the rec that's losing money. Well, it's actually creating a ton of economic development for not only the city of Lacey, but for the region. And that's where it does kind of, bite me a little bit that the other jurisdictions aren't helping on something that's generating so much economic development for the region, including those other cities in the county. So that being said, we've had a motion, we have a second. I know there's still more to come. There's a lot in the future, next phase of the RAC, all that stuff that we get looking forward to and figuring out how we're going to make it happen. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? And that motion carries.
No. I would say we also support the Washington Center and several other things that draw revenue towards us too.
Yep. I totally agree.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
So we have two more items for council. We have another item, a bid award for Lift Station 20 abandonment project. Our Public Works Director, Scott Eger, is going to provide that information.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. I'm going to share my screen and get on with the presentation here. All right. Staff recommends award of project PW 2021-15 to Northwest Cascade. The low bid was $513,140.70. There were 4 bidders on the project. There are 30 working days, and the work begins near the end of August or early September. So the location is immediately west of Rainier Vista Park, as you can see there on the slide. We have a lift station there that, due to the development projects in Summer Walk, allow us to eliminate the lift station and install pipe, abandon force main, and gravity drain wastewater from that area over to what you see the red dot on Ruddle Road, which is lift station 9. Actually, we have, as you know, 48 lift stations. So eliminating a lift station amounts to about $120,000 in savings. We have $1.6 million budget for our lift station O&M. You divide that by 48 lift stations, that comes out to $35,000 a year. A typical lift station rehab replacements in the neighborhood at 2.5 million with a life of 30 years. So you run that out, that's about $85,000 per year. So you combine that, it amounts to about $120,000 per year savings. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask if there are any questions I can answer for you.
Can I get a motion, please?
I move that we award Lacey contract PW 2021-15 to low bidder Northwest Cascade Inc. from Puyallup, Washington, in the amount of $513,140.70.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Mr. City Manager.
So I just want to point out that by taking this action, you're also acknowledging we need a budget amendment of $400,000 to complete the project. So we will do that through our normal process later in the year.
That's a good discussion point. That being said, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of that motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Then the motion carries.
Thank you.
Taking care of our infrastructure. Good job.
All right.
Scott.
So the last item, as you recall, last Thursday, we talked about the Healthy Washington Roadmap to Recovery Safe Start Plan update. That has now changed. We are now under Washington Ready. So I guess the good news is that, especially for our small business community, a lot of the restrictions that were in place under phase 3 are now lifted. So again, this is a discussion point for us because we had a discussion about going back and having in-session meetings at council as well as council committee meetings. So a couple things is, The proclamation that suspended Open Public Meetings Act is still in place. So council still technically has the option to meet virtually, or they still have the option if they want to go in session. So I just want to make that point. In terms of requirements, masks are still going to be mandated for anyone who has not had a vaccine. And both the local health department and the state health department is still recommending or strongly recommending that social distancing remain in place for those who have not received a vaccination. So we can set up the council chambers to be social distance regardless of your vaccination status. And then we will obviously work with staff and also council to ensure that there's proper distancing if that becomes necessary. Last time that we talked about, if there was the desire for council to go back into open session, we do need to do a couple things. We need to rescind or amend a resolution that talks about the time that we meet in terms of being in person, and we need to set basically a date if you want to go back in session and what that time would be. So really the question for council is, if there's a desire to open up, what date would that be? We talked potentially making a decision on the 15th of July. That means you could proceed or have a meeting after that, which would be the 22nd. If you wanted to meet on the 15th in session, we can make an action on the 8th of July, which would be next Thursday. So I guess this is a council discussion, what the desire is to go back into person sessions, and then we could talk about the details, how to get there.
So discussion, Deputy Mayor.
So if we, on the 8th, that's a work session where you're assuming that we could make a decision on a work session. Is that correct?
That is correct. So you meet virtually and you take whatever legislative action to go back into open session.
And do we submit our vaccinated card to you or whom?
So we coordinate that through the mayor, but we could do that in the interim.
So my recommendation is for us to still do kind of a hybrid approach at the very least. One, on our work sessions, I would like to continue to do our work sessions at 4 o'clock and do them remotely. I just think it's a time for us. It's not as important for the public to be at the work sessions. They can still have access to it through we don't typically engage with the public at our work sessions, and so if I would suggest we can continue to do our work sessions at 4 o'clock, and we can do them remotely. As for our council meetings, I do think it's probably time to get back in the council chambers for those who would like to do that. We can still do a hybrid. You don't have to be at council meetings, but I think if at some point we should probably get back. And I don't think we should personally. I don't think we should go back to 7 o'clock either. Maybe like a 5:30, something like that makes more sense. But we don't have to rush any of this. So we can take a little bit of our time. Councilmember Greenstein.
So I have a little different perspective on it, I think, than you do, Mr. Mayor. I agree that we don't need to go back to 7. I actually like 5:30. I think it's a great time. I think for consistency for the public, I think all of the meetings should be at the same time, whether it be work session or council meeting. So my preference would be if we go to 5:30, do it for all of those meetings. And I do believe that we should go back to in-person for work sessions as well, only because I think we get more done. I just think, and I agree with you that we don't have as much public involvement with work sessions, but I think we're able to get more done in an in-person conversation than we are on a Zoom meeting. It's my personal feeling. I do, however, think that we should find a way to do them hybrid, both for the public and for council, for those who may not be comfortable coming back into chambers, or for the public to have that ability to engage with us through like this. We've had better participation, more people at our meetings, so I don't want to lose that with the public. So I think we should find a way to make them hybrid. And I agree, there's not really as big a rush and I think any action we take should be at a regular meeting, not at a work session as much as possible. So I prefer to do it, take the action at a regular meeting. Okay. That's my 2 cents.
Deputy Mayor, and I kind of like to go around and hear from everyone here. Deputy Mayor, you're on mute there, so. I'm
muted. The phone started ringing. kind of like what Council Member Greenstein said. I'm not sure I agree about 5:30 because it's the dinner hour, maybe 6. I know that's kind of pushing it, but at least people could get home and have something to eat before they get to council to engage. I mean, it's still kind of the dinner hour as well, but I think it's hard to get. That's the one thing I noticed in other groups when they talk about meeting. They kept saying, "I barely can get food, in my stomach before I go do da da da." So I'm thinking maybe I'd prefer 6.
To tell you the truth, I think where we're going to see most of our public engagement going forward, no matter what, is not going to be in our council chambers. It's going to be through a hybrid system where they can be able to dial in or call in to us and take public comment that way. So I think we need to keep that in mind. I definitely think we need to keep the public comment section going. All of this, like we've done the hybrid, this system going for the public. So I don't think that should change. City Manager?
Well, just to add, so John Koch and Shannon, our Lacey Assistant City Manager, work really hard to provide a hybrid option. So when council is ready to go in session, it will be hybrid. So people have the ability to use Zoom to be able to interface with council virtually.
Excellent.
Good.
So I think that's where we're going to continue to get most of our public participation. I don't see the public rushing to City Hall to get their 3 minutes of talking or to sit there quietly in the crowd listening to us. They're going to be at home listening to us, most likely going forward. Councilmember Simmons, do you still have your hand up from this one, or is it from the last one?
Yeah, I just want to say, like the hybrid between you and Lenny's ideas. Me personally, I'm double vaccinated, and most of my family is, but a lot of people are not. So coming back home, engaging with public that could be sick, I could be bringing something back home to them. It could be a family member that's under 12 that doesn't even have the option, or regardless, I'm in the interim, I'm probably going to weigh heavily on staying remote, even though I think, being present and being publicly accessible to the people is awesome. But we have to think about our family members first as well. And at least for the first month or so, because with the Delta variant, you don't know, things can change. So,
Councilor Cox.
So, picking up on Councilmember Stedman's thread, we're starting to hear more about the Delta variant and that it's going to be the dominant one by fall. And I would feel more comfortable if Thurston County could get to a 70% vaccination rate before we go back into council chambers. I don't know if we're going to get there or not, but I just think we need to go slow because there's still so much unknown there. And it would be terrible to open things up only to have to shut them back down again. I think that would just be, create havoc, and it would be demoralizing, and, who wants to retreat after all we've been through?
Well, what? I think we do have some time. We have some time on this. I don't think we have to make a decision right now. I'm sort of, as much as I want to be back in chambers, I'm just not pushing it to do that. It's the sort of the risk reward at this point. So I'm not sure if there's any big hurry to do that.
We should just have a choice, though, Mayor, honestly.
Yeah.
I think a choice is fair. I understand that this council is a little divided on the in-person meetings, and if we can assemble a hybrid version, then if we're comfortable with being in the council chambers, then so be it. Then everybody's included, whether you're in council chambers or you're behind your computer screen. We can still assemble and we can still get our meetings done. I don't see what the issue is.
Deputy Mayor?
So it dawns on me as people were talking, one of the things, it may be take more work than we want, but if we could do like 3 come in and then the next time the other 4 come in, and so that there's more room to space out. I mean, but we still would do a hybrid, but it would be based on a smaller number actually in person, and then the other. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm trying to think outside the box. So there's that.
Well, I don't see a clear consensus here to tell you the truth. Councilor Miller, where's your head at?
I kind of like the meetings coming to my desk, but I understand the need to get back in the chambers. It looks like we're not really ready to do that. I do like the deputy mayor's idea of, 3 on, 4 on, and what we can do to make this work. I try to remain flexible. I think that maybe we should give this a little more thought before we try to make a decision. There's not a rush to run back into the chambers, especially if the risk is still present. So,
Scott, what's your call?
Well, maybe let me offer a suggestion, since it sounds like even if we were wanting to go back in, we're still going to have 2 more virtual meetings because you wouldn't be taking action till the 15th. So now you're already at the 22nd. So in a sense, July is over with. So possibly if you want to give yourself another month, see where trends are basically going, we can kind of plan for an August type transitioning back into the chambers.
I think that makes good sense. Give us time. Being that there's no rush, we're still able to do this, so we don't have to be in a rush. I think that makes sense to give it all time.
Okay.
Because we see there's a lot of different opinion, from council, obviously.
Yep, I agree. We'll keep it as is, and let's tentatively plan on doing at least a hybrid version starting in August.
Okay, so we'll probably have another discussion, our last meeting in July, and talk that through to prepare for something in April or August.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And before I let you go, Scott, I'm still getting a couple questions about the 3rd of July. What's happening? I hate to put you on the spot, but I like to put you on the spot. So, can you give a quick rundown of what's going on?
So so fireworks are going to be launched from North Thurston Public High School campus, probably the best way to describe that. It is supposed to be a park and watch. I think we assume people will be by their cars to watch the fireworks. Granted, if you're vaccinated, you have more flexibility to walk around, but I think the idea when we originally planned it, that people would stay in clusters with their family, or at least with known individuals or friends. There's not going to be large crowds because we're trying to avoid that. And we have on our website viewing areas where best to see the fireworks. So you are going to be taking advantage of the retail parking lots. We've reached out to them, letting them know that's going to happen. And so this will be hopefully another indication that we are getting back to normal.
And can you remind me who's sponsoring this, and who do we do the fireworks through?
Yeah, let me, can we get Jen Burbage on here? She would probably be able to provide all these details right at the top of her head.
Or did she? I bet she's gone for the day, isn't she? Oh no, you're stuck.
Nope,
Still stuck here.
Nothing like putting her on the spot.
Hi.
So Jen, did you hear the conversation about just the details?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I just want to, in addition to what city manager just said about staying next to your car to watch, there is no lawn space to watch from. So it's very much like, think a drive-in movie. You just drive up. You can get out of your car, obviously, but just, staying in that kind of general space. So there will be some school parking lots that'll be available, and then also the business lots that are in the area as well. And then you asked about sponsors. So we want to thank Twin Star Credit Union, Interstate Batteries, and the Capital Development Company for funding the fireworks for this year.
And who do we use for the show?
Oh, so it's Western Display is the company that we contract with to provide the fireworks.
Great. Thank you.
So,
go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So how do we thank those people if there's only going to be a couple of us there and we're just kind of in our cars? Will you do that through a speaker or something?
No, it's really gonna be crowds there, right?
Right. So there's no entertainment or stage or anything like that. Gosh, if the council members wanted to type something up or a representative from council, we'd be happy to pass that on to the sponsors.
Sure.
Best
Well,
way.
we'll make sure we send a thank you to the sponsors. Afterwards, we can work on a letter.
Okay.
And, thank the CDC. CDC's been sponsoring this forever and ever and ever. So I always appreciate that. Now, of course, Twin Stars, great, and Interstate Batteries, it's great. I just want to do a quick shout out because I know we're not going to have the ability to do that like we have in years past at the show. So, but I want to make sure they were still being recognized.
Oh, for sure. And we're definitely, on social media and on the website and any promotional materials that have gone out, we've been thanking the sponsors.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Back to you, Scott. Scott, back to you.
So just one more comment too. I just says as we're Washington ready. So in terms of city facilities, we're going back to a 5-day format for the public, just for a customer service perspective. Granted, we are still trying to communicate. If you can do stuff by over the phone, online, there's other options. You don't need to come in person, but we do want to provide those instances where you do need to. Some services may be appointment only also. So we'll be communicating that out also. But that will begin July 6th of next week.
Sounds good. Thank you. So now we're on to standing general committees. The first up is the Community Relations and Public Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm having some connection issues, so hopefully Carolyn can back me up on this if it goes sideways. The Public Relations and Community Affairs Committee met on June 7th at 11 a.m. Myself, Council Members Cox and Kunkel were present, though I disconnected, oddly enough, shortly after the meeting began. The one agenda item was arts policy update. The Community Relations Committee requested that staff provide current public arts policy. So they gave us a rundown of in 1995, the City of Lacey adopted Ordinance 1022 and Resolution 760 to establish Public Arts Fund. It goes into detail about 25 cents per dollar, blah, blah, blah. But it essentially equates to about $500,000. Then Resolution 760, hold on a sec, they increased it to $1 in 2012 during the budget process. And staff recommends adopting a resolution that repeals and replaces Resolution 760 to reflect this increase with an additional clause to allow financial stability.
Yep, I think we went to that on, was our last council meeting?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so it's been reported on? Okay. I did have a couple comments that I wanted to give on that. But we're having a meeting on Monday for public relations, and it has to do with the public arts thing too. So I'll just let the dog rest for right now.
Okay, so then we'll go on to the Utilities Committee.
It looks like Council Member Kunkel
You're right. Councilman Kunkel had to leave.
I can give a quick snapshot.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, please do that.
Our main item in the menu on the agenda was the connection fees, which are currently paid at the time of building permit application, and moving that to the time of certificate of occupancy.
I think we also already talked about this as well. So
yeah, we did, and so it's already really been briefed through a meeting. So I didn't, I just wanted to give it a quick snapshot, and that's
great.
That's really about it.
Well, that was pretty easy. Then let's go on to boards, commissions, and committee reports. I'm up first, and I don't have a report. How about Deputy Mayor?
I'm second, and I don't have a report. Too early yet.
Yep. Councilmember Cox.
Alrighty, well, I can give a quick report from the Regional Housing Council. We met on June 23rd, and top of our meeting, because we could see the heat dome coming, was planning for cooling centers. And, you know, I think this heat wave was pretty hard on people. We're starting to hear numbers now about the number of people who died because of this heat wave. So I really commend the city manager for let's moving to make cooling centers a regular part of our response to unusual heat. We also heard from Peter Cook from the Faith Alliance for Tiny Houses, and he's trying to work with our religious community in Lacey to try to encourage the churches to host some tiny houses to take some pressure off the area and get people who are currently living on the streets into transitional tiny house that hopefully will help people stabilize and then move on to more permanent supportive housing. We also learned that the Build-A-Bus group, which we've heard from a number of times, is offering what they call shower power. And on Saturdays, it's at Capital Christian Center. And on Tuesdays, it's at Unity Church in Olympia, both days from 10 to 4. And while Capital Christian Center is almost in Lacey, they would really like to have a Lacey location that's in the city limits proper. So if anybody has a thought on a good spot for that, it'd be great. We also heard a report on Thurston Thrives Housing Action Team, and changes that are happening within Thurston Thrives with the focus shifting to a new lens of racial equity as affects health and health outcomes. And so the Housing Action Team is the largest of those action teams, but it's done all this work, and they're trying to kind of recenter just a little bit to see how this new focus will affect what they're doing. But I think it's coming along well. And then just one other quick note that the state has $98 million for rapid acquisition funds. And so I'm hoping that the Housing Council or, you know, our governmental entities can take advantage of that and, you know, be ready to jump. And that's my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Greenstein.
I have no report.
Councilmember Miller.
I do have one report. The Thurston Thrives met earlier in the month of June, and one of the primary things we talked about was housing and housing policies. We did get some statistics on homelessness broken down by race, and it looks as if you know, when the breakdown was based on, you know, the percentage they are of the population and the percentage they are of the homeless population, so two different percentages. And it looks like the BIPOC community has a greater level of homelessness based on the percentage of population. And so the action teams will be implementing this data in their future meetings to, you know, combat this kind of an issue. And the data that they're using comes from the Thurston County Homeless Management Information Data System for 2021. So this data and this issue will be implemented into the different action teams to focus on racist housing policies, racial disparities in housing, benefits of homeownership, and policy remedies. So more to come on that. And that is all I have to report.
Thank you, Councilmember Stead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to leave my video off because I'm like touchy. Nisqually River Council met on the 21st of May. We haven't met since, but I haven't had a chance to report on it. Lots of updates. So they talked about the land, Lakeside Industries, virgin asphalt pile and possible contaminant of the watershed. Eatonville landfill was capped poorly, and springs that affect the drinking water in that area. Nisqually Land Trust acquired 2,200 acres recently. Willie Frank III, we all know, got elected chairman of the Nisqually tribe. It's one of my close and dear friends, so congratulations to him. And then also the land trust auction is coming up, and Hanford McLeod was one of the council members for Nisqually, also is making some cedar hats for the auction and a bunch of stuff. And then Yelm Community Gardens Workshop in Yelm City Park is a site for that. It's coming up. And then they also have the STEM field study for the 285 people are enrolled. I think my notes said somehow it's connected with the Lacey STEM Fair, but it was a lot. One last thing was the Nisqually State Park. Trying to read my notes. This was from over a month ago, so it's really hard to remember. They're in phase 2 of which is $11 million project or phase, and the completion it'll be a $21 million project. But it was a lot to take in. I mean, the meeting lasted well over 3 hours, I wanted to say, and it being over a month since I went to this meeting, these notes and my memory kind of don't do the report justice. But they're doing a lot of good work, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Like I said, it was just so much information in a short period of time. But I look forward to sharing more of the good work they're doing in my next committee report. That's my report.
Appreciate it. And Councilmember Kunkel had a prior engagement, so I had to step away early, which means that we've reached the end of our agenda. I hope everyone has a safe and happy 4th of July and can hopefully enjoy the 3rd of July fireworks with your close family and friends that hopefully have been vaccinated. This unique time in our history where we're all just very eager to be going back to normal, and we're so close. Like we're right there, and we're starting to see signs of, obviously getting our economy fully back open, and we'll be able to go to a Mariners game, and without restrictions. That's something I'm looking forward to doing. So we're slowly getting there. It's been a long year and a March. So it can't come soon enough, but we've hung in there, and we've had to adapt where needed. And so I think this is pretty fitting to be able to celebrate our country's freedom, and as we're starting to see all these restrictions go down, makes me feel good. So hopefully everyone ever has a safe, happy holiday, and until next time, keep it classy, Lacey, and I'll call this meeting adjourned. See ya.